Chess is such a fascinating game, but many people are unfamiliar with it. So today we're going to be having a look through the full rulebook so that you can learn how to play chess. Chess is a game where players take turns in moving pieces until the game ends. I'll discuss how the game ends later. First things first, let's start off with the board. So we notice that it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the A are for the vertical lines. These are called file, and the numbers are for the horizontal lines. These are called rank. So for example, this would be the B file. This would be the 5th rank, this would be the 3rd rank, this would be the H file, this would be the F file, this would be the 2nd rank. I'm sure you can get the idea. And you can also use this system to name individual squares. So let's say this square here is on the D file and the 5th rank, this is D5. This square here is on the F file and the 7th rank, this is called F7. This square here is on the B file and on the 2nd rank, this is B2. So now let's have a look at what the pieces are. In the game of chess, there are 6 different types of pieces. Each of them can move differently and has different roles in the game. So let's start off with the names. These pieces here on the 2nd rank or the 7th rank are called pawns. They are worth 1 point in material. These pieces here in the corners called rooks. They are worth 5 points. These pieces here, B and G files, are called knights. They are worth 3 points. These pieces here on the C and F files are called bishops. They are worth 3 points. These 2 pieces here on the D file are called queens. They are worth 9 points. And these pieces here are called kings, and they have infinite value. If you can take your opponent's king, then you have won the game. So let's start off with pawns. As mentioned earlier, they align the 2nd and 7th rank. They move forwards and they take diagonally. A pawn can move forward is 1. However, if it is the first move that a pawn has made, so for example, if it is still on its starting square, then you can choose to either move it 2 or 1 spaces forward. So for example, we're going to move the pawn here. This is on the F file, and the 4th rank, we're going to go pawn F4. Since it has not made a move yet, we can move it 2 spaces forward. And now, let's say our opponent plays H6. So the pawn comes to the H file on the 6th rank, pawn has come to H6. The pawn has come 1 square forward. It's always a choice whether you move it 1 or 2 squares forward. And now we will go here. So this is on the 5th rank, and the F file, we've gone pawn F5. The pawn can no longer go 2 spaces forward, as it's not on its starting square. So now let's have a look at capturing. Capturing in chess is where you move your piece, so one of your opponent's pieces squares, and then take your opponent's piece off the board. It's how you win material, win a piece. So for example, if our opponent were to play G6 here, pawn to G6 on the G file, the 6th rank, then pawns take diagonally. So only 1 space, but we would play F takes G6. So this pawn on G6 has been removed from the board, and now we would take that pawn and put it on the side of the board. And then here, this F pawn take diagonally forwards, like this. Sorry if I didn't mention that earlier. Pawns can only take diagonally and like forwards. So a pawn for white could only take these ways, and the pawn for black could only take these ways. We'll just have a look at a special rule associated with pawns now. So let's say here, instead of G6, black played the move G5. This rule is called en passant, and it's where if a pawn moves 2 spaces forward, you can take it with another pawn as if it had only moved 1 space forward. So here we would play F takes G6 again. This pawn is removed, and we would act as though the pawn on G6 and we just captured it, and then F takes G6. So now let's have a look at the kings. The kings are on the E file, and they can move in any direction by 1 space. So for example, the king could come to E2 here, the king could come to D7, king could come to D3. The king is the most important piece on the board. So if it is attacked by another piece, then you must do something about it. It's called check when it's being attacked by another piece, but we'll have a deeper look into that later. These pieces here are called queens, and they are the most powerful piece on the board. This is because they can move diagonally, horizontally, vertically, and any amount of spaces. So for example, the queen could come here, 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 here. All of these squares that the queen could go to, like this. So for example here, we could play queen captures on D8, and then the king would just recapture. These pieces here are called bishops. They can move diagonally any amount of spaces. So this bishop here could come to G2, H3, E2, D3, C4, B5, or A6. And just like any other piece, they could be captured. For example, bishop A6. Now, this piece here is another bishop, so it would take diagonally and capture our bishop. The bishops come in 2 colours, the dark squared bishop and the light squared bishop. Since bishops can only move diagonally and the chessboard is in this sort of pattern, the bishop will always stay on that colour square. So this bishop will always be on a dark square and this bishop will always be on a light square. One special rule involving rooks and the king is castling. So it is when the king and the rooks cannot have moved and all of the squares between the king and rook must be clear. But then the king can move 2 spaces towards the rook and then the rook will come to the other side of the king. Again, so this would be called castling on the king side and this would be called castling on the queen side. The reason that it's called king side and queen side is that the king is always starts on this side of the board and the queen, as we saw earlier, starts on this side of the board. Saving the most complex for last, we have knights. Knights are special because they can hop over your and enemy pieces. For example, a rook on h1 could not come to h3 as it'd have to pass through this pawn, but knights, however, can jump past pawns. The way that knights move is quite complicated. They move in an L shape. So this knight could move to here, to here. This knight could move to here or to here. I'll show you now. Let's say this knight comes out here. This knight could come to any of these squares, or it could go back. So it's quite hard to understand how the knights work at first, but this is the moving patterns that they use. Now we could move this knight here. This knight could come and make an L-shaped move to g4, and then just like any piece, this would be captured. Our knight on e5 would move in an L shape and capture this knight on g4. Before any chess game, the board needs to be set up properly. I'll remind you where all the pieces go now. All of these pawns go on the 2nd and the 7th rank for white and black respectively. White should always have the a1 rook in the corner. The rooks go in the corners of the board. The knights go next to the rooks. The bishops go next to the knights. The queen goes on its own colour. So the white queen goes on the white d1 square and the black queen goes on the black d8 square. And then the kings just go next to the queens. The kings go on the opposite colour. This is the perfect position to describe the rest of the chess rules. So first off, we'll have a look at kings. So kings cannot come within 1 square of each other. So this black king could not come near this king. The white king cannot come to these squares, neither can the black king. So after that rule's covered, we're now going to look at promotion. Promotion is where you get one of your pawns to the back rank of your opponent. So for white, you'd get it to the 8th rank, and for black, you'd get it to the 1st. Once the pawn is on the back rank of your opponent, it promotes. So that means that you can change it for any piece you like. Here, I'm going to change it for a queen since this is the most powerful piece. And now this is the perfect position to discuss the other rules. The way that you win a game of chess is by checkmate. Checkmate is where, as we looked at earlier, your opponent's king is in check and it also nothing can be done about that check. The pieces given the check can't be taken, the check can't be blocked, and also king cannot run. So for example, the move queen a8 here would be checkmate. The king is attacked. The king cannot come here, otherwise it would still be in check from the queen. The king cannot come here as it's still being checked. And these squares are out of bounds due to this white's king here, and the kings cannot come within 1 square of each other. So now let's have a look at the final rule, that being stalemate. A stalemate is where your opponent has no moves. Your opponent has no moves to make. So, for example, black has no other pieces to move, no pawns to move, no rooks to move, and the king cannot move. The king cannot move here, it'd be check. The king cannot move here, it would be check. King cannot move here, it would be check. A stalemate is always a draw. The final way to win a chess game is by resignation. That is where your opponent gives up if they believe that their position can't be saved, really. I hope that you found this video useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.